All right, so that's my boot sitting on the table in my art room. And this video is going to be me showing you how to start a drawing of a shoe, a boot, a sneaker, whatever you have in front of you. The first thing that you do need to know is that you do have to have this in front of you. You can't just use your imagination for this project. So I'm going to actually turn my paper this way. And I strongly suggest that you don't trace. And the reason for that is because then you rely very heavily on tracing, and it actually doesn't come out as well. So I have the side profile of my boot, and I'm not going to worry about what I see on the top or back here or on the back of this boot. I'm just going to look at the side image, okay? To start your drawing off, you just determine which way you're going to hold your paper. So if anybody has like a tall boot, either a rain boot or an UGG boot or something like that, you're going to want to have your paper the tall way. Most people with sneakers, high tops and low boots like this are going to have their paper this way. And this is horizontal. So you want to use as much of the paper as you can. So what I like to do is I like to start giving myself some guidelines. And because my boot is a little high, I'm going to kind of go up to about here, and this is like around this part. And so you start off with this sort of very boxy looking shape. And I'm hoping that this shows up in the camera. Okay, so that's kind of the shape, and this curve is here because, you know, it's kind of a curve like that. Very basic. And now we need to start carving away at this. So if you think that your basic shape is off, that's what you need to do first. So for example, if I do this and I do this and my basic shape looks like this, that's a lot less realistic, because if you look at the shape of my shoe, there is a width here. That's where my foot needs to go. Nobody's foot is that skinny. So starting off with a good basic shape is important, even though it's going to completely change from here. So I tend to like to start from the back of my shoe or the sole of my shoe. So whatever you're more comfortable with. But basically, most often shoes kind of come up off of the ground. So I'm going to start there with this curve. Instead of this flat edge, I'm going to start here with the curve. And I'm pressing a little harder than I would suggest you do, because you want to make sure that you're leaving some room for erasing. Now, before I know how high to go here, I need to sort of look at where this heel lines up with. So if I take my pencil and I do this, it happens to line up pretty perfectly with the high point of my, where like my laces go, which is right around here. So I can draw a very light guideline, and that's where my heel is. So I'm going to draw my heel, and then it goes up and comes kind of down here. And don't go crazy erasing. Just leave those sketchy lines. Don't worry about them. Okay. So now I have that basic curve, and then I like to go to the back, and I'm looking at, there's like some bumps here. So you see where the wooden heel ends. It goes in a teeny bit and then comes back out on a curve. This is my heel of my foot. And then I see there's like a wrinkle in my boot. That's probably where my ankle is. And then it goes up, and now I'm at this part. So this is not pointy. This comes around and then curves down. So I'm going to have it come around and curve right here, and it curves down. Now I'm going to follow this, because this is where my laces get attached to, and it's a separate piece of material. And again, I'm looking at where does this line up on my shoe. It lines up to the point where it's kind of the lowest spot, actually. So like right down here is the lowest point. So it's right around here. So I can draw a little guideline to help me. And then it attaches, if I'm looking really closely, it attaches to my heel. Okay, so far so good. So this is my sole of my shoe. And that's so far so good. Okay, I'll get the details of all this little stitching and all these designs later. First I gotta get the structure of my boot down. Now my toe is rounded, on my boot. And then it comes and it meets this piece from where I'm sitting. So I'm just gonna draw that line. And then I see, now I can start getting into some details. So now I see I'm looking at how much distance is between here and here. So it's about like that, and it's a curve because my foot is curved. And if I'm looking really closely, there's definitely some stitching, so I'm gonna try to draw that. There's a little bump, because I guess the leather gets raised up there. And now I get to have fun adding all my little details. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe these are too close. So you're gonna wanna spend some time really looking at the details before you even begin to draw, so that it's really easy for you to see. There's stitching all along this, and then there's stitching here, and then there's stitching above it. There's stitching that comes along here. So don't be lazy. Try to check out the details of your shoes, because there are people that sit there and design these shoes and do beautiful designs. Just acknowledge what they do. This is an elastic, so it's got like lots of little lines here. And then that's stitched around. And there's some lines. So now I can erase some of these. I feel like I made that heel a little too chunky. So it's just you're constantly erasing and you're constantly perfecting what you've got going on already. There's some wood grain here. And then the laces. And the laces, you know, you may want to include the laces or you may not. And you may, you know, from here I can see the back piece of my shoe and the inside where my foot goes. So if you want to get into drawing all that, you can. This is a project that I do with my 5th graders, so I don't need you to do this, but if you want to and you feel like you're up for the challenge, go for it. I'm going to hold off on the laces, and that's because this sketch is really just a sketch for me to get used to drawing my sneaker. The next part of this project is going to become turning this into a monster. So I may want to use the laces as part of my monster's details, and I may not. So for now, I'm going to leave the laces off, and if anybody needs help with the dressing laces, I can do that in person if you're in my classroom. And if not, if you're at home watching this video, try it and just see what happens. And, you know, do your best to really observe where the laces are hitting your shoe and where they're coming out of. So the laces are coming out of all of these little holes. So trying your best to seeing where they're going and where they're getting attached to. All right, I hope this was helpful. Try your best and don't be too critical. And then if you have extra time, try another sneaker.